Hello my beautiful bookish friends, and welcome back to my channel. It has been a hot minute since I've done a wrap up. I stopped doing them for a while just because I was kind of getting bored of them. They weren't doing well on my channel. And it seemed like you guys wanted to see stuff that was more like vloggy, reading challenges and that kind of stuff. So I did that for a little bit. Then that put me in a slump. And, today I was just sitting and I was like, you know what? I want to talk about some of the best books I've read this year. Talk about the ones that maybe people were interested in when I mentioned them in TBR. Never really followed up on them. So I am talking about 22 books today that I have read between March and September, because that is what month it is when I am recording this. I'm not sure when this will go up. But think of this as like a pre what I read this year wrap up. I've read more books than this between March and September, but I excluded books that were rereads and books that I don't rate. So like my Geronimo Stiltons. So yeah, I had a lot of rereads in there. I also did not include my DNFs. I think I will put that in a separate video. If you guys want to see that, let me know, and I will tell you why I DNF'd all the books I did this year. I was trying not to DNF anything this year. That really just didn't happen. So, yeah, let's talk about the books I have read. So, the first one I want to talk about from March, and actually the only one I want to talk about from March, I did not read much in March, was The Collective. So, The Collective is a thriller. It's a book of the month thriller. And it definitely messes with your mind. It is a dark web inspired novel about a mother who is dealing with the loss of her child. She is grieving. She finds a support group on Facebook for other grieving moms. And it ends up kind of leading her into this club, this exclusive message board where these women help each other get revenge on the person who wronged their child or hurt other children, and they kill them. But because there's no connection, everything's done through the mail and through the secret, they never get caught. So it's got a great twist at the end. It was very good. It's one of those ones that you start reading and it goes very quickly because there's message boards and texts and emails. So let me see if I can find a good... So this whole one is like a post and the comments. So it's very easy to read. It's all from one point of view, but it really messes with your head of, is this woman crazy? Am I crazy? Am I missing something? I don't remember what I rated this, but I did really, really enjoy it. If you are someone who maybe thrillers aren't, like, you're kind of apathetic to them. I like thrillers, but they're not what I reach for the most. This is something that will kind of get you into them very quickly. Next one we have was me finishing a series in April, and that was for Kingdom of the Feared. I actually reread all the books to get to this one because I wanted to know what happened. I annotated and tabbed, which I normally don't do on my first read, but I just knew I was going to love this book, and love it I did. It's the perfect wrap up for this series, and I may have talked about these in a vlog. If I did, sorry about it, but not everyone watches the vlogs. This one, we are finally seeing the end of Victoria and Amelia's story, and we're seeing what is going on in hell. Is Amelia going to take over? What is this deep secret that their family has been hiding all these years? A lot of it, if you read the first ones, especially when I went back and reread them consecutively, it was like, oh, obviously that's what it is. But upon a first read, you're not going to pick it up. But as you can see, lots of tabbing. The romance was great. The magic in here was really heavily pushed. It was definitely super magic focused, where Kingdom of the Cursed was kind of mostly romance. This was mostly revenge, magic, and then there was some spice in there as well. So Karen Maniscalco, I love dearly. She's coming out with a new series very soon. So definitely, if you're a fan of hers, keep your eyes on it. But this was just perfection. I did really good in April finishing the series. I think that was kind of like a challenge that I put out to myself. But I finished the Dreamland Billionaire series by Lauren Asher. I read The Final Offer. This is the thickest of the books, the most sad, and the hardest to get into. However, I did end up really liking it. This is Callahan and Elena. It's a second chance romance, forced proximity, enemies to lovers, friends to lovers. There's all kinds of tropes going on in here. There's talk of addiction. There's a single parent. There's so much going on that it seems like it would be overwhelming. But really, once you get into the story, it just feels like one of those things where, like, when you're stuck in real life and everything's coming at you all at once. And I guess this series is the precursor to Lauren Asher's new series, which is going to be The Lakeside Billionaires. And they talk about that in this book, about the land around this lake that the family owns, the land, or part of the land around, is being developed. So I think that's going to come in. That's going to be kind of the next step. This has some small town coziness to it that the other ones don't have. We're not in the parks. We're not dealing so much with the company. And I think that really helped this book, because if it was exactly the same as the others, or we're dealing with the company, we're dealing with the family dynamics more, it would have felt like the other ones. Moving on to the next book, another romance. I was feeling the romance in like April, May, June, which is pretty common, but that was like all I wanted to read. So I picked up Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey to complete that duology. And I thoroughly enjoyed this as well. It's a Tessa Bailey, so you know it's going to be funny, it's going to be steamy, and it might even make you cry. So I don't think I cried at this one, but this is the little sister from It Happened One Summer and the other fisherman. So his name is Fox, and they are a kind of like, they end up being roommates, so it's forced proximity, but it's also this friends to lovers, but they're not really friends. They're kind of get to be friends, and then she learns more about him, and then she starts to like him and has to fight it and think he doesn't like her. All that good stuff. This one was such a quick read. I read it in a day. With this one, I felt like the town was more developed. The sister and Brendan do show up. Piper and Brendan are in this one as well. But I don't know. This one just felt a lot more believable. And I don't want to say cozy, but maybe cozy, maybe more realistic, more lifelike. There wasn't as many like, oh, that would only happen in this situation in a book kind of moments. I felt it was just more realistic. And I feel like with every book, Tessa Bailey has such a set formula, and this one strayed away from it a touch, but not so much that I didn't enjoy it, but just enough to make it feel fresh and different and more developed. If you haven't read this yet, if you haven't read this duology, you absolutely should. Next, we have one of my most disappointing reads. I've actually contemplated selling this book, but I wanted it so bad, and maybe I need to reread it physically because I listened to it on audio because I was so excited to get it. My Barnes & Noble didn't get it right away. That is Winter Soldier Cold Front. I'm so excited. Bucky Barnes, how could it let me down? It did so much. It was supposed to be nice little smeared lipstick. It was supposed to be like what we didn't see in either of the movies, that in-between time, and to me, it just didn't grip me the way I wanted it to. I wanted more Bucky. I wanted more, I don't know, the characterization, my light just went out. The characterization did not hit the way I thought it would. So yeah, I was disappointed by this pretty deeply. I'm still on the fence about keeping it. I think I'll give it one more reread eventually. If I end up liking it, cool, I'll keep it. If not, oh well. I just felt like we were going to hear more about the assassinations, more of the things he did, and really it was just like one mission that didn't really have anything to do with anything, and it kind of just, I don't know. It left me wanting more, but not in a good way. Ruger has now joined us. He is being his stubborn self and will not move, so we're living with him being in frame, which is fine. He could just lay down, but he will not. Okay, so the next book I don't physically have anymore. I have sold it. It has been unhauled. It is Raising the Horseman by Serena Valentino. Again, kind of a disappointment for me because I do enjoy her villain series so much. The book was just very surface level, very, again, one of those books that if I read it when I was really young, I probably would have liked it. But I've just aged out of that kind of teen mystery that has like these weird undertones. Of just like, it had great representation of a female-female relationship, which wasn't the problem. It was like the way the boys acted in it, which was very accurate to how teenage boys act, but then every other teenager was just dumb. I just did not enjoy it, so I've gotten rid of that book. The next one I remember very little about, and that is The Last of August by Brittany Calvaro. I listened to this on audio, and truly, from A Study in Charlotte to this one, I could not tell you what happened. It says it's action-packed, which it was, but I think it was just too much, and I don't know enough about Sherlock Holmes and the Moriartys and how that all fleshes out in the original story for me to have, like, connected with it. So it's kind of, I think it's just, like, second book syndrome, where too much happened, but then nothing happened at all, and there were too many characters, there were too many storylines going on that I was supposed to care about. So it kind of off-put me to the whole series. We'll see if I end up keeping it when I listen to the third book on audio, but as of now, not a fan. And that was how I started May. So I kind of slumped in May. I read The Hunting Wives at that time as well. Again, another book that was, I've already sold it. It's already got a new home. It is a wild ride. It is very interesting. It is like Real Housewives meets, like, I can't even think of like a good show. Maybe like Claws, if you guys ever watched that. Like, there's murder, there's intrigue, there's these, I think what put me off is I really don't like reading like inappropriate relationships, and there was like the housewife and the boy next door kind of thing, and he was a teenager, she is not, obviously. There was just a lot going on in that book. The murder was very interesting. You know that it happens from like page 1, and then you kind of you jump back and forth. But there's this weird stalker thing that I felt like could have went deeper, like it didn't go deep enough. I liked certain parts of it, but other parts of it felt really misplaced. And the way it ended, I was not a fan of either. So kind of disappointed in that one too. Next we have one of my favorite books of the year, which completely took me out of the reading slump. The Hunting Wives put me in, and that is Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. I have read all the books in this series now, and this one was absolutely my favorite. I loved Danny, I loved Jacob, I loved the way they bickered, but then worked really well together, and he just had to accept it. And I could not stand her family, and it made so much sense as to why the other sisters are the way they are. But this one was definitely, I think I was in the right place, right time reading this, where Eve was between jobs and she wasn't sure what it even means to be an adult, which does anyone really even know what it means to be an adult? And, you know, she's kind of in the space of like, I'm really passionate about this and you won't take me seriously, and having to like prove to herself and everyone else that she can do the job really, really well, run this bed and breakfast, and they should take her absolutely seriously. And realizing that she's kind of failed at everything else because no one has taken her seriously. So if you are in your mid-20s and you feel like you're fumbling through life, read this book. So I just stuck to the romance train since it was keeping me reading, and I read Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. Another start to a duology that took her formula and turned it around. We still have a small town. We have grief. We have bigger issues in this than I think any other of the books have tackled, especially because we're talking about like the death of a family member, and then like, you know, how big companies come in and run small businesses out of these small towns, and then these legacy businesses not changing. I thought it was really good. This is Tessa Bailey's first plus size character. I hope she writes more of them. I would say she's mid-size just by looking at her. I would not say she is plus size at all, but she's supposed to be plus size, or at least not. Her size is mentioned a few times, not as his insecurity. She's very confident in herself and embraces it and eats and drinks wine and eats cheese boards every day, but it's just noted a couple times, mostly that she has big boobs. So I feel like the size rep could have been better, but it was okay. Overall, this was just really funny and feel good, and I loved the grumpy sunshine and the different personalities. So Tessa Bailey made me happy again. The hat because it was distracting me. But the next book I have to talk about is the London Seance Society. Controversial opinion, I did not like this book. It felt very convoluted. If you've been on the channel for a hot minute, you know how I feel about convoluted endings. There was too, I don't know, Sarah Penner's works don't land with me. I didn't like The Lost Apothecary. I didn't like this one. And this one felt even more, I don't know, something about it just, I did not like it. It didn't feel scary, spooky at all. So I DNF'd it. Well, I finished it, but I kind of like sped through it and then sold it off. So that's gone. But what isn't gone is Well Matched. This is the third book in Jen DeLuca's like Ren Fair series. She did such a good job with this book. I enjoyed the first two, but they really heavily focused on the Ren Fair. This one, the entire first half, doesn't take place at the Ren Fair at all. It is April, who is the older sister of the first girl, and Mitch, the guy who wears the kilt that everybody loves but no one really takes seriously. They fake date. She's a single mom. Her daughter's moving to college. She feels like she doesn't have like any roots, so she wants to go make new ones, and then she kind of realizes maybe she likes this little town and the people in it. But they fake date. They go to his family reunions. She sticks up for him. Then his family shows up at the Ren Fair. They're still supposed to be dating, but they're not. This wasn't part of the plan, so then they have to start fake dating again. And then, of course, they fall in love, and it's great, and it's wonderful, it's magical. But I think this did a really good job of keeping you in the world of the Ren Fair, like the final offer did, but not overdoing it to the point that you're like, this is the same as the first two books. So, one of my favorites of the year, and I still have to read the next one. We have a volume 1 of Lore Olympus. I have also sold this, or it's at least in my stack of unhauls, because I didn't like it. I know, I read it and I was just like, I don't understand why people love this so much. It wasn't that cute. It wasn't that fluffy. It was okay. I get it was a webtoon, and maybe I've just outgrown that kind of medium and it getting published, but I really, really didn't like it. I felt like, obviously it follows the mythology, so there's some stuff in there that's pretty heavy, but I didn't connect. I didn't feel like, oh, I need a Hades in my life, or Persephone's so amazing. I just really did not like any of the characters, so I got rid of it. Yeah, that's gonna be like one of my most unpopular opinions of the year for sure. Next one I got was kind of surprising. I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did. It is Kate Clayborne's Georgie All the Way. This is about Georgie, who's kind of, she feels like she's a screw up, but she's really not. She was a personal assistant. She doesn't know how to take care of herself. She always has to be doing for others, and now that she doesn't have her job anymore, she doesn't know what to do with herself. And she ends up moving into her parents' house because they're always traveling. They're always out and about, finding a guy who's already living there, and they kind of strike up this roommate situation and this really amazing friendship. But yeah, it's definitely Grumpy Sunshine, but it's in the South. I listened to it on audio, which I recommend because Levi's voice is actually like Southern. It just adds a little bit of extra charm. Georgie is quirky without being like overly quirky to the point that you're like, we get it, you're not like other girls. No, it was super cute. Oh yeah, she used to be in love with his older brother. That was the big thing. Like, she had a huge crush on his older brother, and he was the screw-up little brother, and that's how they kind of connect on feeling like they both have kind of, like, I have uncomfortable truths to connect over. This one I read in July, so it's been a little while, so bear with me. Yeah, it's a romance, but it's a deeply emotional romance. There's a lot of issues that are discussed that just really hit home, and I very much enjoyed it. This one's on Hoopla too, by the way, if you want it for free. The internet wore me down. I read Icebreaker. I was back and forth because I had heard really, really good reviews, really, really bad reviews, and, you know, I remembered that I myself am a sucker for all smut, no plot. This wasn't that, but it was super fluffy. It read like something on Wattpad. It was amazing. The only thing that sucks is like the pages kept falling out of my copy. I don't know why that happened, but I'm obsessed with it. I can't wait to read Wildfire. I'm very excited for that and all the other stuff that Hannah Grace writes. I have a bunch of her stuff on my TBR, and people like her. However, I really, really loved this. I loved that they made this deal, but then immediately they were thrown together in this really cool, like, world of ice skating, but then it talked about the pressures. It talked about real stuff that is important while also talking about the fluff, the, you know, the whatever parts. I truly loved it. I thought the characters were done really well. I'm not sure why people didn't like it. I think they felt either it wasn't spicy enough or it was too young, too dumbed down. I don't know. It just felt like a good, nice, wonderful new adult, like The Deal. The next book I'm not going to grab off the shelf because it's very hard to grab, but I will post pictures here. It's not Mother Knows Best by Serena Valentino, and this book is so good. It's about Mother Gothel, and it gives us a backstory as to who she is, why the way she is, how is she a witch, because there's a lot of unanswered questions in Tangled. So like the first 75% of the book is her backstory, how she became a witch, and then we roll into how she gets involved with Rapunzel, and then the whole story of Tangled, but there's some extra elements there. You have to read the whole series to get the full effect, but it's super, super good. Serena Valentino is doing this thing in this series where the first 4 books are all heavily connected. Then the 5th, 6th, 7th book stray a little bit, but there's mentions of the other books or the other people in the other books that are supposed to be taking place in this big like prophecy storybook. And we kind of learn how all the villains are interconnected, but just in different ways. So it's super cool. It's very fun if you're a villain aficionado like me. But yeah, I highly recommend that one. Then we have Loathe to Love You by Ali Hazelwood. I am loving her works. These were 3 short stories that you can't get individually, but this is a bind-up of them. They are all forced proximity. They are all STEMinist. It is a lot of enemies to lovers. I mean, it's all enemies to lovers. The first one is the girl is an environmental scientist and her mentor dies, leaving her house. She goes to move in, realizes her nephew, who works for like an oil drilling fracking company, is living there. So they fight about that. They fight about their feelings, and they fight about who should leave the house. This one here, Below Zero, is an Antarctic like expedition. The guy is a scientist and he turns down her grant because he thinks he's protecting her. She gets mad about it, goes anyway. He ends up rescuing her. That's a dual timeline and I highly recommend. It's very intense. And then Stuck With You is an elevator one, and that was my least favorite just because it was a miscommunication trope, but overall super good. Love Ali Hazelwood's writing. Highly recommend this, and I still need to read Love Theoretically. This one I don't have because I borrowed it from the library, and I'm really happy I did. It's called Next of Kin. It is a story of a sister who is estranged from her mother, was in foster care, and has a lot of issues because of that. And her mother calls her, or her social worker calls her, says her mom has had another baby. She decides she's going to take custody of the baby because she's now 22. The baby needs a house, but the only way she can get custody of her sister is if she has stable housing. So she enters this program where she ends up living with a deaf teenage boy and his brother. And it's enemies to lovers. It was okay, but ultimately forgettable. Even though the premise is great and amazing and very touching, the rest of it just wasn't there for me. There was too much, I don't know. Maybe there wasn't enough of each thing. Their romance was kind of cute, but the rest of it was kind of, everything was very convenient. The trials and tribulations were like rushed through. So it was okay, but I definitely will not be reading the next one in the series, which is a different couple that is in the book. Just because I feel like the writing style just didn't hit with me. But if you're someone who likes emotional romances, I would say Next of Kin is definitely for you. After Next of Kin, I slumped pretty hard, decided I wanted something totally different, so I decided to pick up a witchy read, and that was The Kiss Curse by Aaron Sterling. I heard there's another one of these coming out, which is so exciting. It's small town witchy romance, and I needed that in my life at the time. I still need it in my life. There's a new one coming very soon from Book of the Month. This one I felt like was better than the first one. I got into it and wanted to know what happened. This time it is the cousin from the ex-hex, so it's Gwen and the brother Wells. He comes to the town to try and reclaim Pen Hollow for the family, but really it's to get away from his dad and his monotonous life. And the two of them end up working together to make both their shops thrive, and they end up cursed. I don't remember. Oh yeah, Gwen cursed Wells at one point, and now it's coming back to bite her. So it's a very fun, like, how do we break this curse? Oh my god, we're in love, now we really need to break this curse. Just cute practical magic vibes. Next, we have a book from Catherine Center, who I read Things You Save in a Fire before. This is The Bodyguard. This is one of her most popular books. This is the female character is the bodyguard to the male character, and he's supposed to be like an actor who is very popular, but he's returning home to deal with his mom's cancer diagnosis. It's very cute, fake dating, gets deeply emotional, touches on some big issues. I hated the main character for 65% of the book, gave it a 3.5 star, but recommend it to anyone that's like an emotionally driven romance, which seems to be a theme with these books that I read during this time frame. I read was Throttled by Lauren Asher. I borrowed it from the library. My friend read it and loved it. The only thing I didn't love about it is just I didn't get a lot of the references because I'm not an F1 fan, and she certainly is. The romance was cute. It was fine. I definitely think Lauren Asher is coming to her own with the Dreamland Billionaire series versus the Dirty Air series. I'm going to continue with it, but Throttled to me was okay. It wasn't one of my favorite books, but I didn't hate it either. If I knew more about F1, I would probably have loved it. And the last book I actually have already unhauled because it's just not me and I'm not continuing with the series. It's The 1000th Floor. I have had it on my shelves for so long. I finally decided to just read it, get it over with, see if I liked it, and I didn't. It's basically Gossip Girl meets Pretty Little Liars in this dystopian, utopian, sci-fi 1000-floor building that the higher floor you live on, the more money you have, the more influential you are. The lower, it's bad, but everything's contained in the tower. You don't really need to leave for any reason if you live on the top floor. Very like the spaceship from WALL-E is how I kind of thought of it. Yeah, the ending was okay. It basically, like, once you read the first 8 chapters, you kind of saw where it was going. And I just am that YA super dramatic, over the top, mixed with sci-fi, which I really don't like anyway, just didn't appeal to me at all. So I got rid of that series. We'll see if I keep going with my Catherine McGee books, I have American Royals and Majesty, but now I heard she's coming out with a 4th book in that series, and I don't know that I'm ready to commit to all of that. So we'll see. But that is my wrap up of stuff between March and now, and I'm currently reading 4 different books. I'm reading Ladies' Guide to Mischief and Mayhem, which I just have not been able to really get into. Final Girls, which again I've kind of stalled out on. A lot of people say this is Riley Sager's worst book, so we'll see what I continue on with. And then I'm reading Assistant to the Villain, which I'm loving and highly recommend for anyone who likes romance and fantasy. And I am listening to Evil Thing, which is part of Serena Valentino's series. So, got a lot going on right now. But I'm going on vacation soon, so I'll have a lot of reading time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you do down below. Let me know what you're reading, and I will see you guys next one.